Hi, and welcome to our latest procurement spotlight video, which I'm sure you're already aware of the format. But as a reminder, Fleur and I randomly pick three articles, each from the world of procurement. Two of those articles are from right here in the UK, and one is overseas in a totally unscripted approach. Fleur, how are you doing?
I'm good. I think I'm still just about getting used to these, but it's interesting to look at different news articles, see what's happening, not just in the UK, but around the world. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier on, I did a coin toss without you knowing, and it landed on heads, which, as the gaffer of the show, which I've literally just decided, by the way, that means you go first.
Okay, great. So I think we're going to mix it up a bit this time and go start with our international articles.
Okay.
So if I'm going first, then the one that I've chosen relates to Iceland. So this is quite poignant because I know from our conversations we have both visited Iceland and Reykjavik,
Mm.
and we both really enjoyed our time there. So when I saw this, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to talk about a place that we both really enjoy. So this was an article that was posted on LinkedIn. And you're gonna have to like forgive any mispronunciation because yes, there's some interesting words. But anyway, it's for a tender that has been published by the Transport for the Capital Area, and as mentioned, it was published on LinkedIn. And the tender is for the Fossvogor, I think that might be how you say it, Fossvogor Bridge in Reykjavik, which has now been published. So the tender is inviting construction organisations to participate in the development of the Fossvogor. Oh God, how many times am I gonna have to say that today? A bridge, which is seen as like a flagship infrastructure component of the first phase of the Borgerlinen, which is the capital area's future BRT system. So the tender has been published is just for the bridge and it's a standalone main contract and I think they're then going to do further procurements for like adjacent roadworks, which are going to be procured under a separate tender at a later stage. So Reykjavik has an ambition for a sustainable multimodal transport system, and this bridge is going to be about 270 meters long, and
Wow.
it's going to include like a number of different elements. So it's going to have like a central bus lane for public transport, it's going to have a commuter cycleway, a pedestrian footway, and three illuminated viewpoints as well. So it's quite like a massive infrastructure, and obviously to try and manage lots of different things. It's been advertised within the European Economic Area and is being conducted in accordance with Icelandic procurement law. So very different to what we're obviously looking at the
Absolutely.
moment. Submission deadline is towards the end of August, and it also details that the award will be based upon lowest price. So obviously again very different to what we look to do in terms of Procurement Act.
Yeah.
But they see that the bridge is seen as being more than just a structure. It's like they talk about how it's a statement of intent and is part of a vision for greener, more connected Reykjavik. Um, and they're looking for capable and visionary contractors to bring this vision to life as part of their tender and offering. So yeah, really fascinated to see like how this like progresses, and especially as we have both visited Iceland and Reykjavik. So that was
Excellent.
my international one that I saw and thought I need to talk about that one.
Really interesting that, and as
Hmm.
you say, a part of the world that both you and I have actually visited, a
Yeah.
fascinating part of the world. I immediately thinking there about the structural work that's going to have to take place there, Fleur. And I mean, I think a lot of people would naturally think that it is a cold country, lots of snow and ice, which yes, certainly for a large proportion of the year it is. But then this time of the year, it's quite green, isn't it? I don't know when it was that you actually visited, but I have got friends and family that have visited during the summer months, if you will. But I do wonder, in terms of the activity and the work that's going to be required from that, once obviously that opportunity is awarded, what sort of constraints and challenges they'll have with regards to the weather.
Mm. Yeah, well, it obviously depends when it takes place and when the work is carried out, but how they manage that could be interesting.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
guess they've probably got ways around working through that, given that
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you
it's
said about it
normal for
being a
them, really.
statement. Sorry, Fleur.
It's
Go ahead.
normal for them, isn't it? Like they would manage a lot of construction works in that sort of weather conditions, whereas us, it would be
Yeah.
A lot to manage.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And you talk about, of course, it being a statement. I'll be interested to see how that looks from an aesthetic side. You know, you and I visiting Iceland, of course, you'll know the cathedral there. It is quite a sight to behold, isn't it? It's you know, the actual architecture of it. I wonder, you know, is this going to be your regular run of the mill type bridge, or is it going to be something that's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and eye catching? I guess time will tell.
Yeah.
But then, to your point, it appears that cost is going to be king on this one as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Just thought that was an interesting one to
Love
start
it.
off today's video.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, you absolutely smashed your pronunciations.
I was
So the pressure.
practicing.
I think you were wonderful. Absolutely fantastic. But
There
I
were
think
some others that I couldn't pronounce at all, so I was just like, I'm just not going to say that.
skip those. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see how I fare then. So if I pick up with my international news piece this time around, and I'm going to take you over to the Caribbean and Trinidad to be
Mm.
more precise. So got a nice mixture of parts of the world there, and obviously climates too. So I'm probably going to absolutely butcher some of these pronunciations. I don't know how does the phrase go now? Something about it's not you, it's me. So again, it will be that case in terms of some of these pronunciations, I'm sure. So apologies in advance for those. But this article actually comes from the Stabarek News, where it appears that there's been some issues associated with national roadworks contracts over on the Caribbean islands. So much so that it's attracted interest of Prime Minister, in fact, their first female Prime Minister, I might add, who goes by the name of Camilla Persad Bessassar. As she's highlighted concerns over the quality of roadworks, despite the significant spending, calling for greater technical oversight and use of the new procurement tools to ensure accountability. Off the back of that statement from the Prime Minister, Fazir Khan, who is president of the Joint Consultative Council, has responded, stressing the importance of the newly operational Office of Procurement Regulations for transparency and informants in public contracting. I'm sitting here right now, Fleur, and I'm wondering whether the roads in Trinidad actually suffer the same sort of fate as where I am in South Staffordshire, where in fact we actually have more potholes than roads. So that would be interesting to see. But as ever, I digress. Prime Minister Camilla Prasad. See, told you I'd mess it up. Prime Minister Camilla Persad Bessar was elected only recently, in fact, on the 1st of May of this year. And Fazir Khan of the Joint Consultative Council continued by saying roadworks undertaken close to elections have historically raised concerns in relation to value for money. So it does appear to be a little bit of a political hot potato,
Mm.
it seems. Our friend Mr. Khan continued by, and in fact, he's been somewhat busy as he's also recently been appointed to the newly operational Office of Procurement Regulations, which, Fleur, I'm sure you'll absolutely love this, is seen as a vital mechanism for transparency and enforcement. And the view is that now that they have an independent Office for Procurement Regulation under their recently launched new procurement legislation, which I think I saw something posted on LinkedIn recently around this, all these contracts would be subject to the oversight of the regulator, and the information would be made public via their annual reports. And to kind of close the loop on this article, the Prime Minister Camilla Persad Bessassar has called for proper auditing and testing of roadworks to be standard for every contract, supervised by independent consultants. Are we going to pack our bags, Fleur? You know, it seems like an exciting
It's the
opportunity to get
Caribbean.
involved in. Yeah, definitely. But joking aside, mindful of what the Prime Minister is requesting here, the Office of Procurement Regulations, working within the confines of Trinidad's new procurement legislation, they will oversee all contracts with information made public via, again, as I've mentioned, their annual report, with the aim to enhance transparency and accountability. I've got a fun fact for you, Fleur, as I have again for the articles I'm going to run through today. So you're aware of how much of a cricket fan I am. You cannot mention Trinidad without mentioning perhaps their most famous son. And that is Brian Lara, who in fact is one of, if not the greatest batsman in cricket history. He hails from Trinidad and Tobago, and he actually holds the record for the highest individual score in both Test cricket of 400 not out and first class cricket, playing for Warwickshire of a 501 not out. So there you go. That news piece coming from Trinidad and Stabarek News.
Interesting. Sounds like they're trying to put as, more transparency and regulatory overview in terms of like their procurement processes and those type of things, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next article. So now we're back in UK, so much more familiar procurement sort of world to us. So my next article is published by Construction News, and the article is around, it's titled "How Crescent Outlines Plans for New Capital Works Framework," and was as mentioned, published by Construction News. So Crescent are a Crescent purchasing consortium and is based in Salford, so near Manchester, and they provide purchasing frameworks, dynamic purchasing systems, and procurement consultancy services for schools, academies, colleges, universities, and other educational organisations. So very much like a framework sort of provider, but for educational organisations and purposes. So the article is linked to how they have outlined plans to launch their new construction framework for public sector and education clients across the UK. And so far, they have published a pipeline notice at the end of May, which details how they are looking to put in place an 8-year agreement, which they are planning to have running from December 2025 until November 2033. So yeah, God, that's scary. So the aim of this framework is to help education and public bodies appoint contractors for capital works more efficiently. So obviously they'll have a framework in place, and so you can do call-offs and those type of things. Obviously this is like the very start of their thinking, and this is a pipeline notice, so there's still like a lot more details in terms of approach, etc., that need to be finalised. And there is reference in there that they are looking to do pre-market engagement sessions being carried out. So key to note here is that given the type of notices that we are talking about, it will be procured under the Procurement Act, given that is now live. So it will be a Procurement Act focused procurement activity. So there's obviously probably going to be pre-market engagement notices. So that's another thing to look out for. And then the pipeline notice also details that they have a law firm, so Waitmans, which will provide legal guidance on the framework, and Identify Consult has been appointed to deliver technical advice. So these are actually detailed within the notices, and it is understood that the official tender notice is scheduled for publication on the 14th of July. So yeah, quite obviously they're probably finalising and working out the approaches that they want to do before starting their procurement. But something, if contractors in that sort of area are interested in participating, one to keep an eye out or look out for when further notices are published.
Definitely. And as you mentioned, obviously naturally now being run under the new Procurement Act itself. And yeah, we say this so much, and I'm sure in one of the other articles I'm going to cover today, another one to watch and follow. I think the interesting note there is, of course, they've appointed an external, lots of interesting notes there actually, but they've appointed an external legal firm.
Yeah. Consultancy, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, and again, perhaps maybe one of the reasons around that is because of, well, two, in fact, the complexity of the procurement subject matter.
For everyone,
yeah, and the fact that of course it's been procured under the new regulations as well, and they want to build in that extra assurance if they can from a legality and compliance perspective, perhaps. One to watch, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think we say that in every video. Oh, watch one to watch. But I think that's just fascinating, isn't it? Like how everyone now is utilising the Procurement Act and how they're going to utilise it. So it's interesting to see like what their procurement approach might be, or how, I don't know, for example, if they're going to do a competitive flexible, how they're going to structure it. It's just because it's new to everyone, it's interesting to see how places interpret it.
Definitely. We will see. Time will tell. Okay, then. So, as Fleur has just mentioned, back to the UK, and I am going to go with an article entitled "SMEs Secure Clean Sweep on latest consultancy frameworks. So this one's coming from or via the Yorkshire Post. Fleur, I thought that this one was a good one to cover, given the amount of time that you and I have made reference to the identification and subsequent selection of SMEs over our various podcast episodes and videos. So an interesting one here, I'm sure. Okay, so Procure, who I personally confess I'd never come across before, are in fact a procurement arm of Efficiency North, who are a public sector owned procurement framework provider. My research, a little bit over and above from the article itself, informs me that they specialise in delivering intelligent procurement solutions primarily for social housing providers. They have a range of procurement frameworks and dynamic purchasing systems, which I assume, given the fact that they are a public sector owned framework provider, anything they procure post the 24th of Feb this year, of course, will have to be via the Procurement Act, aka the new regulations. Rambling as ever, as an organisation, they focus on Northern England, i.e. Efficiency North, but their services and arrangements can be extended beyond that part of England. As you'd imagine, their frameworks ensure all the good stuff is covered, such as social value, sustainable solutions. But more essentially for this article itself, you'll see here is Procure emphasises on adding social value through their procurement activities, benefiting the communities served by the number of organisations they have as members. So the article on screen now, the appointed consultancy framework is a little bit of a monster. It has no less than 106 successful bidders on the framework. Wow. This framework focuses on construction-related services for public sector, social housing and commercial buildings alike, including renewable energy services as well. You remember what I said about their focus on SMEs just now? Well, those 106 successful bidders, small and medium-sized enterprises, account for 92% of those appointed. So 92% of those 106 are under the very definition of an SME. As for the framework access reach, it will, again, primarily operate in Northwest, but Yorkshire and Humber, and the East Midlands, but again, may well be extended to other areas too. How long is the framework in place for, I hear you ask? Well, actually, you just mentioned an arrangement that's going to run until 2033. That trumps this particular framework, because this one is running for 48 months. And if my maths are correct, that takes us up until 2029, which sounds to me at least like light years away. The framework covers various consultancy areas such as project management, quantity surveying, M&E engineering services, retrofit assessor and coordinator services, principal design services, fire risk assessor services, and land development services. Noting that, of course, traditionally, primarily, their framework arrangements are for social housing providers. The procurement strategy. So the framework incorporates what's known as FAC, FAC1 framework agreement and dynamic models for ESG delivery, emphasizing on increased transparency and collaboration. I was scratching my head. What does FAC1 mean? Well, in fact, anybody that has used this approach, drop us a comment and share your views and experiences, because I certainly would be interested in learning more about that, as I'm sure, Fleur, you would be too. But it is a framework alliance contract.
I was going to say, is it the alliance contract? Yeah.
It is indeed, which proposes to be a versatile standard form contract designed to integrate and manage multiple related contracts for work, services, or suppliers, where, of course, alliance element, collaboration is at the heart of the approach.
Yeah.
Do you want a fact? Well, I'm going to give you one, whether or not you want one. I'm going to give you a fact.
So, do I have a choice?
Not anymore. This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, okay? So as of 2024, so last year, there were reportedly over 175,000 management consultancy firms operating right here in the UK.
Wow.
does appear that we become a little bit of a nation of telling people how to do things. There you go.
Excellent. That's a great fact, especially in terms of what would you say, 92% of the suppliers are SMEs. So that's
Right.
incredible in terms of number of SMEs on it. Okay, so moving on to our last article each. So mine was an article published by MSN. So remember those days, MSN?
Yeah.
And it's around procurement firm aims to cut 1 billion hours of admin time. So the opening statement is that an innovative procurement firm aims to cut 1 billion hours of administrative work from the construction industry and how it's expanding in the UK. So the article is making reference to Procure Pro and how they have already overseen 35 billion pounds of construction projects globally, which has reclaimed 700,000 hours, which is equivalent to 340 years of continuous labour. So
Whoa.
quite some impressive figures there. And the view is that this is just like the very start of it, and that the use of procurement automation software will reshape procurement. So very much links into like our previous AI sort of video. If you haven't seen that, we'll link it below and above. In terms of like automation, we talk about automation and how it might help in those sort of things. And it details how like teams have been, drowning in emails and spreadsheets and manual processes for quite a while.
Mm.
And then that plus mixed with like UK construction and how they're facing like a lot of like labour shortages, lagging industry growth and sluggish technology adoption. It's sort of saying that this sort of like procurement software adoption is like a key strategic solution, which, as they detail, will empower contractors to cope amongst these challenges. There are some construction companies that have already started to do this with Procure Pro, and some of the feedback has been around how they are reporting significantly reduced like administrative overheads and enhanced project transparency, and other areas have seen like accelerated decision making and improved cost control. So that's quite an interesting one, and I thought very timely given like our sort of conversations around AI and automation and how that can
Yeah.
sort of help like reduce like focus on those sort of things. And as they talk about like email, spreadsheets, manual processes, so it's obviously like a way of taking away the focus on those areas and making that automated, and then allowing them to focus on more important aspects of the construction sort of area. So I thought it was quite interesting.
It is indeed, indeed, and actually, you've opened some wounds and scars there, referring to our recent artificial intelligence video. We're still here to tell the tale, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
We've survived it. And one of the interesting takeaways from that article as well is of course, we're talking about automation, we're talking about emerging technologies, etc. But for this to actually work and for it to be as efficient and as beneficial as possible, I think what that article suggests there is that that there does need to be this kind of collaborative effort and appetite towards from both buying organisations and suppliers to work together on this. In terms of improving from an information flow administrational effort. Would you suggest?
Yeah, definitely agree.
Excellent. Great article. Okay. Talked about labour shortages earlier and skill shortages here in the UK. The final article I'm going to cover today actually might go a little way to solving those challenges. So this article, last one from me for today, is entitled UK Manufacturers Urge MOD, Ministry of Defence, to channel defence spending to SMEs through binding offset deals. Okay, so this is possibly, arguably, the biggest UK-based procurement piece of news right now. And that, of course, is in relation to the huge financial boost for the Ministry of Defence that has been recently announced. Now, I'm not going to speculate or guess the monetary figure, as to every article I have come across in relation to that says something different.
Is
And
this what
Fleur,
is this what they're talking about in the news? Is it SDR? is it
That's right.
Strategic Defence Review? Oh, yeah, I've seen quite.
Correct, correct. That actually is a just a small portion of the bigger deal that we're discussing here, Fleur, would you believe? And I think, whilst I've just mentioned there, I'm certainly not going to speculate or guess the monetary figure as a totality, because again, all the articles I've come across does say something slightly different. Fleur, I'm sure you'll agree, it's not in our wheelhouse of conversation, to discuss financial amounts and quoting figures in that regard. However, we can certainly discuss procurement matters associated with this clear and apparent opportunity. And this article comes via Business Matters magazine, where UK manufacturers have, in fact, urged the Ministry of Defence to channel defence spending through SMEs by binding offset deals. So again, this is the second of the three article picks this time around that I've picked up on that include the reference and use of and utilisation of SMEs. So some interesting views and stats from this article, for sure. As we often say, Fleur, this is yet another one for us to keep an eye on. So there's a call for what is known as a binding offset agreement, where British manufacturers are starting to put a little bit of pressure on the government by urging them to embed legally binding offset agreements in future military procurement contracts. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a very busy old time for procurement professionals in defence, it appears. However, the thinking behind these offset agreements is that it would require foreign contractors to reinvest a significant proportion of their contract value back into the UK economy. And for that reason, it's hard to argue to the contrary, I would suggest. A bit of another interesting fact here is that the proposal aims to ensure that small and medium-sized enterprises are major beneficiaries of the UK's rising defence spending. Kind of tying in and reflecting on the skill shortage here in the UK from a labour perspective there, Fleur. And despite the huge percentage of SMEs we have here in the UK, as you and I have often discussed when chatting about Procurement Act 23, currently SMEs receive only 25% of the annual defence spending. This is much more than making SMEs richer, however. This is the view that these binding offset agreements could create thousands of highly skilled jobs and secure sustainable domestic industrial base. This includes establishing or expanding manufacturing sites, investing in supply chains, and supporting technology transfer as well as training. Obviously, this would be UK-wide as an approach, but from a regional perspective, the proposal includes a focus on historically under-supported areas, such as the Northwest, the West Midlands, which actually aligns to the government's very own levelling up agenda. The article uses evidence by way of a comparison with international practices elsewhere, which again, certainly I'm by no means qualified or experienced enough to comment on, but what it does suggest is that such agreements have been put in place in other parts of the world successfully, with notable benefits akin to what British manufacturers are proposing here. This has been backed by industry leaders, where Make UK Defence argues that a robust, enforceable offset policy is essential for treating defence spending as long-term investment in industrial capability, regional regeneration, as well as, of course, national security. And as ever, one final fun fact for you guys today and for yourself, Fleur. So, and I actually knew this already, given my involvement in MOD in a previous opportunity and role. MOD owns and manages one of the largest estates in the UK, covering approximately 1% of the country's land area.
Wow.
So there you go.
Really interesting. It's very topical, isn't it? There's a lot in the news about this at the moment. So, as we always say, one to keep an eye on. So I think that's all of our articles for today's Spotlight video. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions of a very mix of different topics, locations,
Climate.
climate, yeah, ice and sun. Yeah, so we really enjoy bringing these different like articles and views and stuff to our videos. So we hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a like and come and subscribe and join our procurement community. We are building up a range of different videos on our YouTube channel, and we'd love to have you along. If there are any areas that you'd like us to discuss as part of future videos, please do let us know in the comments and we will pick those up. But for now, thank you, and we shall see you in the next video.